pizza.
So after years of trial and error, this is a very straightforward dough recipe that works every time. So follow the ingredients and techniques and you'll have great pizza. 600 grams or 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 450 milliliters of water, 2 teaspoons of olive oil, 1.5 teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoon of yeast, and you're going to let it sit for 7 to 8 hours at room temperature to ferment and create some flavor. So I always weigh out my ingredients whenever I'm making bread or pizza. So 600 grams will make 2 large pizzas. It's the equivalent of pretty much 4 cups of leveled off cups of flour. I use all-purpose. I don't find a big difference between all-purpose and 0 or 00 flour. There's minor differences, but if you add whole wheat flour, don't go more than maybe 10% whole wheat because it doesn't have the amount of gluten. So there you see 600 grams that on the scale. It's good to have a kitchen scale when you're doing baking, a lot more accurate. So I added the salt and the active dry yeast. I keep my yeast in the fridge and the remainder in the freezer. So mix these 3 ingredients together really well. You want it evenly distributed in the flour before you add the wet ingredients. It's important. Just use a wire whisk. So there on the counter you can see a dough whisk. For years I was using a wooden spoon or a plastic spoon, but these dough whisks are a lot easier to work with. So add your olive oil, 2 teaspoons. And then this is just room temperature, 450 milliliters of water. And then kind of slowly work in the water. And as you mix, you'll notice it'll get a little bit harder to work with. It takes a little more effort. But yeah, no machine is involved, no bread machine, no mixer, stand mixer. It's all by hand. Very easy methods, and basically just you're waiting for the dough to develop flavors over time. So you can either make this in the morning or make it at night and then let it sit for 7 to 8 hours minimum for it to do its thing. It's basically self-kneads. When you see recipes for no-knead bread or no-knead pizza dough, this is pretty much what it is. You're not using a machine, you're letting the ingredients naturally do their thing. Okay, so there's still some dry flour on the bottom of the bowl. I'm kind of just folding things over a little bit. Again, you're not really doing a knead here, you're just kind of making sure everything is kind of sticking together before you set it aside. So I have this spatula that I'm just kind of pressing things down and making sure everything is still together. Now if there's any dry ingredients on the bottom of this dough, it'll get, don't worry, it will get worked in as it sits. Okay, so press it down. Just make sure it's all together. And it looks dry, you think maybe it needs more water, but don't worry about that. There's plenty of water there to work with, and you'll see at the end what the results are, that it's nice and moist. Okay, so I'm going to set it aside in a corner of the house where it's there's no big temperature swings. It's just room temperature. So 7 to 8 hours. The longer the better, it'll give you more flavor. So this is about after 8 hours, and you can see signs of activity.
Oh my goodness.
It's pretty much doubled in size, and there's lots of air pockets. So the next step is to punch it down and get rid of some of those air pockets for the next rise. Okay, so at this point it's a very sticky dough. You just want to get it out onto a floured work surface, or in this case, a cutting board. Whatever you have is fine, as long as you have enough flour to make the process a little bit easier. Alright, so get it out of the bowl, and you can see how wet it is. So what looked like dry at the beginning, there's still plenty of water. So here I'm sprinkling some of the flour on the top and just kind of working it in. Give it a couple of folds and kind of punching it down with the bench scraper that I have, just to kind of get it in a rough shape, and then I'll use my hands after that. So what I'm doing is just getting it in a rough kind of mass, because I'm going to be splitting it into two for 2 large pizzas. So just kind of get it evenly shaped to cut it in 2. I'm going to do that here.
Ouch! Ouch! Ouch!
Some people will weigh them to make sure they're identical to make 2 even pizzas, but after some experience, you just cut it in half and they're pretty much the same size, so I wouldn't worry about it. So here you kind of fold over, pinch the center, and then flip it around and start forming a ball. Just kind of bounce it up and down on your work surface. If there's any bubbles, just pinch them and pop them, but you're just forming a basic dough ball. Give it a squirt. So that's olive oil. You just want to coat the ball with on both sides with a light coating. Don't overdo it with the oil, just put enough to keep it from drying out. So it's going to go into the second rise. I'm just going to work the second one. Again, you're kind of folding it over, and on the bottom I'm pinching and forming a ball and rotating. Okay, and then just kind of spin it around a few times. Another squirt. Same process, coat both sides. Now our oven has a proof cycle, which basically simulates the oven light being on and having a fairly warm interior temperature, draft-free area for the dough to rise. So I think I put it in for 30 to 40 minutes, and the dough does rise a bit, and it's a lot easier to work with. So here you can see I'm putting it directly onto a pizza pan. I found it a lot easier to do that than to first put it on a surface and then go from there. But yeah, watch me work it for a little bit. Alright, time for the sauce. So you don't want to overdo it with the sauce, or you're going to end up with a soggy pizza. So it always looks like there's not enough sauce when you see this, but just spread it out evenly. This happens to be pizza sauce out of a can, but you can certainly make your own. I've done that before. So you saw when I was rolling out in the pan, I switched to my hands to do the edge, and I added a bit of oil to my hands because it's still a little bit sticky, but a little bit of oil helps to create that ridge along the edge. So add a cheese of your choice. Again, you don't want to go too heavy with any one topping because you'll end up with the problem of it not baking properly if you've loaded it too much. So I'm adding here a mild chorizo sausage, not too spicy, and you want to slice it pretty thin too. You don't want it too thick because it won't get crispy in the oven. Alright, so I'm adding some peppers, yellow and red, and a bit of onion. And a few olives if you like them. You can always add fresh basil. And I'm adding a bit of pixie dust. You can add marjoram, Italian seasoning, oregano. In this case it's just straight oregano. So in the description I'll add the link. I make this nonstick mixture very easy to make, but I keep it in the pantry and nothing ever sticks, so I just brush that on. So here's my second glob of dough. But that second rise makes it so much easier to work with, and it's going to give you an airier dough. So watch me work. So after you do your rolling again, you just want to use your hands to push it out to the edge and make a little bit of ridge so that your sauce stays in one place and doesn't go over the edge. So the second pizza is going to be a pineapple and ham. I've sped it up a bit so I'm not completely boring you. So again, this dough makes 2 large size, fairly thin crust pizzas, which serves about 4 with a little bit of leftover sometimes. But 600 grams of flour seems to be the magic number for me that I've found that makes 2 good sized pizzas. So this is just a black forest ham that's not too salty and not too smoky. And it's pretty dry. You don't want anything too wet. Like even this pineapple is fresh pineapple that will drain some of the water off. Or if you use canned, make sure you drain the water because you don't want a soggy pizza. It affects your baking time too if you put some moist ingredients on top. Okay, so we'll spread it around. And I'm going to add the remainder of the red and yellow peppers and a few onions. But I'm going to hold the pixie dust this time. And you're going to want to bake for about 15 to 20 minutes at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 230 Celsius. Of course, every oven is different. Some convections take less time. But yeah, thanks for watching. You can see the results there. And again, this took a lot of trial and error, but it is a good dough recipe, so I encourage you to try it out. So please subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of upcoming videos. Thanks everyone.